You're the custodian of what goes on right here. And you can dwell on fears and thoughts and doubts and worries if you want to, but what I'm saying is, Paul says, cast down those imaginations and bring every thought to the obedience of Christ. Now we have a tool and we have a weapon in our... We don't just have to... The battle is not on the terms of just... See, it's awful hard just to not think anything. Your mind's not a vacuum. You can't just not think. So if you say, I'm not going to worry. Ooh, sorry. I'm not going to worry. I'm not going to be afraid. You know, what you're doing is you really just... You can't fight it that way. You have to replace what you don't want with something that you do want. You have to take what God says. And here Paul tells us, hold fast the profession of your faith. In Paul's presentation of Christian theology, it begins with our confession of Jesus Christ as Lord. Let me show you one more verse before we... I'm running out of time. I'll tell you what. Go back to 1 Samuel. I'm going to give you this illustration. 1 Samuel chapter 17, verse 43. 1 Samuel chapter 17, verse 43. I'll just abbreviate it a little bit. What we have the opportunity to do is to hold fast the saying of the same thing that we believe. You can drive out and resist and pull down thoughts and imaginations that don't belong there by saying what God says. I just choose to believe what God says. And I'll tell you what, it's an important thing to do. It's the way we fight the good fight of faith. This is the story of David and Goliath. I know you've read this story before. I know you know the story. David was a shepherd boy. Goliath was a giant who came and threatened the armies of Israel. And his challenge was, send me a man. If you've got a man to fight against me, send me a man to fight against me. And if he defeats me, we'll be your servants. And if I defeat him, you'll be our servants. And everyone was terrified. Everyone was afraid of Goliath, this giant. But David was not afraid. And David went to face the giant. Notice what it says in verse 43. David now goes out to face the giant. The Philistine, that's Goliath, said unto David, Am I a dog that thou comest to me with staves, that is, with his staff? And the Philistine cursed David by his gods. And the Philistine said to David, Come to me, and I will give thy flesh to the fowls of the air, and to the beasts of the field. Now, that is a kind of a threatening idea, isn't it? And if David would have taken stock of that, it probably would have made him afraid, right? Listen to that again, verse 44. The Philistine said to him, Come to me, and I will give thy flesh to the fowls of the air, and to the beasts of the field. This is just the way the devil is, you know. All these threats and fears, and you know, if you take it seriously, if you dwell on that, you know, if David would have said, wow, I never thought of that. Wow, what if that's true? Wow, that really scares me. No, David didn't do that, though. David did not take stock of the fears offered to him by the Philistine. Verse 45. Then said David to the Philistine, You come to me with a sword and with a spear and with a shield, but I come to you in the name of the Lord of hosts, the God of the armies of Israel, whom thou hast defied. Verse 46. This day will the Lord deliver you into my hand, and I will smite thee, and I will take thy head from thee, and I will give thy carcass to the host of the Philistines this day, and to the fowls of the air, and to the wild beasts of the field, that all the earth may know that there is a God in Israel. Now let me ask you a question. Why did David bother to say all this? Why didn't he just grab his rocks and his slingshot and just go off running after the giant? David here is fighting the good fight of faith before he ever... See, the weapons of our warfare are not slingshots and stones. It's not the actions, but it's what he believes. David here is saying he's fighting the fight before he actually engages the giant. This is the fight of faith. David here is confessing what he believes. He is saying what he believes. Now, what if David would not have done that? What if he would have said, well, I hope it works. I don't know. Probably it won't work out. Nothing ever works for me. What if he would have said that? He would have been confessing his fears, confessing his doubts. You see, when Paul tells Timothy, fight the good fight of faith, hold fast to the profession of your faith, David here is doing just that. And it's a beautiful illustration. See, I'm sure David had to resist thoughts of fear, worries and thoughts of what if it doesn't work, and you know, what if you fail. And David didn't take stock of any of that. He just said, you're coming to me with a sword and a spear, but I've got something more than that. I've got the name of the Lord of hosts. And notice what he says. This day will I take your head from you, and and all the earth will know there's a God in Israel. Verse 47. And all this assembly shall know that the Lord saveth not with sword and spear. For listen to this. For the battle is the Lord's, and He will give you into our hands. Now that's a good thought. David's faith, what he believed was, the battle is really not mine. The battle is the Lord's. All I'm doing is I'm going out and engaging the enemy, but I'm not fighting with slingshot and stones. The battle is the Lord's. That's just the tools in my hand. You see, the fight of faith took place before he ever went to engage the giant in what he said. And I think it's important that it's not by accident that he did this. He did it on purpose. Verse 48. And it came to pass when the Philistine arose and came and drew near to meet David, David hasted and ran toward the army to meet the Philistine. And David put his hand in his bag and took thence a stone and slang it. I didn't know slang was... He slang it, is what King James says. So I guess we can't change it. He slang it. And smote the Philistine in his forehead, and the stone sunk into his forehead, and he fell on his face to the earth. Wow, it worked. It worked. We're always surprised when it really works. You mean God's faithful? Yes, God's faithful. What I'm encouraging you to do is to hold fast the profession of your faith. Say the same thing that you believe. Don't give voice to your fears and your doubts and your anxieties. Sure, those come to all of us. You can't help that they come to us. But like I heard Brother Hagin say one time, I thought this was good. He said, you can't stop a bird from flying over your head, but you can stop him from building a nest in your hair. You can't stop thoughts from coming to your mind, but you can pass them on out and resist them. And again, the weapons of our warfare, the tool in our hand is primarily that we agree with and say what God says. And, you can say it quiet, you can say it loud. I just encourage you to say what God says, And there's lots of promises. The children of Israel came into a land called the land of promise. Now, we're not going to some real estate called the land of promise, but we have a life of promise. And we need to lay hold on God's promises and just agree with and say the same thing that He says. Well, if you don't know what promises to lay hold, I'll give you some suggestions. How about Philippians 4:19? That's a good promise. My God shall supply all of your need through His riches and glory by Christ Jesus. Now, the way I do that is, see, that's in, Elliot, put that up there, Philippians 4:19. Oh, yeah, thank you, you're ahead of it. My God shall supply all your need according to His riches and glory by Christ Jesus. Now, what am I going to do with that? That's a promise of God. Well, I'm going to lay hold on that, right? And I'm going to say, here's what I say. God supplies all my need according to His riches and glory by Christ Jesus. And when I say that? Especially when I look at the checkbook and it doesn't look like, and it looks like that's, when I see opposition to that. You see, we lay hold on, we fight because there's opposition. Elliot put up Matthew 8:17. Matthew 8:17. That it might be fulfilled which was spoken by Isaiah the prophet, saying, Himself, meaning Jesus, took our infirmities and bore our sicknesses. Now, what am I going to do with that? Just leave it there and say, oh, well, I wonder if that's true. Listen, that's in the Bible for our benefit. I lay hold on that and say, if God said, if He took the trouble to put that into my Bible for me, Himself, Jesus, took our infirmities and bare our sicknesses, and I just make it personal. I say, Jesus took my infirmities, Jesus took my sicknesses. Therefore, if He took them, then I don't have them. I say, He took them. And when I say that? When I feel like something contrary. When it seems to be on. See, this is the way you fight the good fight of faith. You lay hold on what God says. Lay hold on His promises. Just think about Caleb when they came up and they said, there's giants here, They said, there's walled cities. That's equivalent to saying, you don't know how I feel, Well, that's right. You might not feel like it, You might see opposition. You might feel opposition. But remember what Caleb said. Let's rise up at once and possess it. God's given it to us. God gave us this. Let's rise up at once and possess it. Jesus took my infirmities. He didn't go and suffer all that in His crucifixion just for no reason. He did that so we could have the benefit of it. Let's all stand up today. I think you've got it.
Jesus is my